Good morning and welcome to the University of Arkansas's 2023 Martin Luther King Jr. Vigil presented by the Black Students Association and the Associated Student Government. My name is Haley Tucker and I currently serve as the president of the Black Students Association.
And I'm Elisa Williams, the Director of Special Events for Associated Student Government. We are so grateful to have you all back in person this year to continue the tradition of honoring the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. King served as a Baptist minister and social activist, leading the civil rights movement in the United States from the mid-1950s until his assassination in 1968. His leadership was fundamental in ending segregation in the United States.
King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, and his work inspires us today as we continue to demand equity, justice, and inclusion within the University of Arkansas and beyond.
Once again, we want to thank you all for joining us in celebrating King's legacy. And now we would like to welcome the University of Arkansas Inspirational Chorale to the stage to perform the hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Often referred to as the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing was a hymn written as a poem by NAACP leader James Weldon Johnson in 1900. His brother, John Rosamond Johnson, composed the music for the lyrics. A choir of 500 school children at the segregated Stanton School, where James Weldon Johnson was principal, first performed the song in public in Jacksonville, Florida, to celebrate President Abraham Lincoln's birthday. At the turn of the 20th century, Johnson's lyrics eloquently captured the solemn yet hopeful appeal for the liberty of Black Americans. Set against a religious invocation of God and the promise of freedom, the song was later adopted by NAACP and prominently used as a rallying cry during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Here's Inspirational Chorale.
Lift every voice and
Thank you for the awesome performance. Up next, we are proud to introduce Chancellor Charles F. Robinson. After serving as interim chancellor of the University of Arkansas for 15 months, Dr. Robinson was named the University of Arkansas's first Black chancellor this November. Robinson has served on the University of Arkansas's campus for more than 20 years, beginning as an assistant professor of history in 1999.
Since that time, he has held positions including Director of the African and African American Studies Program, Vice Provost for Diversity, and Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. Most recently, Robinson served as Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs. In each position, he has worked diligently to promote student success, equity, and inclusion, and a commitment for increasing accessibility to campus resources.
Robinson's research and teaching focuses on Southern history and race relations, African American studies, sexuality and history, and civil rights, among other topics. He has earned many awards for his teaching, including the Fulbright College Master Teacher Award, Arkansas Student Alumni Board Teacher of the Year, and induction into the university's Teaching Academy. We are honored to welcome Chancellor Charles Robinson to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh no, you're gonna have to do better than that. I know the lights are out and that causes people to be a little more subdued, but this is a celebration. Good afternoon, everyone. There we go. That's the University of Arkansas I know, and we're delighted to have this program as we do every year on our campus. It is a reflection of our commitment to social justice and expanding equal opportunity to all. And I really want to take this opportunity to recognize the members of ASG and also the Northwest Arkansas MLK Council for their efforts to make this program a reality. I'll ask them to stand so we can give them a round of applause. You see, I went off script, but the chancellor can, so that's something you got to recognize. I have the great honor of introducing both our moderator and our special guest today, and I will just give you a brief bios of both of these individuals. Our moderator is our own Haley Tucker. Haley is a native of Little Rock and a senior graphic design major who is minoring in art history. She is very active in campus life, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, a member of the Order of Omega, and was recently selected as a member of the 2022 Homecoming Court. During her time at the U of A, Haley has served as a 360 peer mentor, an ACT Academy coach, an academic enrichment program peer mentor, a School of Art peer mentor, the National Panhellenic Council's Director of Advertising and Public Relations, and Vice President of Community Service for the New Greek Council. She also currently serves as the president of two registered student organizations, the Black Students Association and the Black Alumni Society Scholars. I'm really not sure how she does all this and gets her work done, but she obviously does because she's graduating. And and we're just delighted to have her serve as the moderator today for our distinguished guest, the one and only incomparable Dr. Cornel West. Dr. King once said, "Every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" Our guest today has certainly taken those words to heart. Dr. West has lived a life of service, both as an educator and a human rights activist who champions causes including racial justice, LGBTQ plus rights, and the fight against modern-day slavery. He was interviewed as part of a panel or a guest panelist for the MLK program, and if you missed that, you missed a lot, but I'm sure you'll get a taste of what you missed today. He is, I could go on about Dr. West because I remember studying his works when I was an undergraduate at the University of Houston. And Dr. West, I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying that, when I was an undergraduate, I studied your works. And so he is a remarkable, remarkable individual, and he is going to come and enlighten us, I'm sure, because every time he opens his mouth, he makes a difference. Now, before he comes, again, I'm going off script, I had the privilege of meeting the one and only Karl Malone today. Now, you may not know Karl Malone, but I do. I followed Karl Malone coming up when I lived in Houston, and Karl Malone, we used to call him the mailman, and he delivered every single day. He didn't even take Sundays off. He was the quintessential NBA All-Star, and in just my first meeting with him, I realized that he is actually a nicer person than he was a great basketball player. And I really mean that. Karl, I wish you would stand up so you can be recognized. I saw him over in the corner, and we're gonna let him get away. He told me, and I mean, he meant it. He said, anytime you need me to come, you invite me and I will come and talk to students or do whatever you want me to do. And he said, don't worry about paying me, but we'll see how that goes. But anyway, Karl, thank you for being here. We really appreciate your presence. Now, without any further ado, we have Dr. Cornel West. Dr. West.
Oh, you want to ask a question already?
Sanction question.
Oh, you got my name spelled with 2 L's, brother. I got 1 L, 1 L, 1 L. Okay.
Why most celebrations of Dr. King always whitewash his radical socialist?
Oh, we're not gonna whitewash it today, brother. This is not deodorized. We're gonna keep it funky today.
Second question. The Nobel Peace Prize winning organization ICANN called the U of A a school of mass destruction for working on nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Dr. King in his Nobel Prize speech says,
No. He's all right. He's almost done.
I refuse to accept the cynical notion we must spiral down the militaristic stairway.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can just read it here. I believe that unarmed and unconditional truth.
What would Dr. King say?
Appreciate you, brother. No, absolutely. No, he's all right, y'all. He's all right. He's all right. No, indeed. Martin knew this is a jazz-like thing. You can't just try to impose any kind of control. Let it flow. The spirit flows in different ways. But we're going to take our time. We're going to have our time together. Is that all right? Is that all right? Absolutely.
How are you today?
I'm blessed as I can be. I've been in Arkansas for the whole weekend. Yes, that's rich. A lot of good spirit here. You got a mayor who loves the people. You got a mayor who's got fire in it. So where's Brother Jordan? Where is he? There he is. Stand up, Brother Jordan. Stand up, Brother Jordan. No, this is special Joe. I was telling him, I think that Johnny Cash is his first cousin. He's got that flow, that honesty, that sincerity, that authenticity. And that's very much what Martin was about lifting every voice. And then with Brother Charles Robinson, I mean, good God. Oh, so I'm very blessed. And I'm so blessed to be in dialogue with you as well. And then we got Carl Malone and Kay Malone in the house. Where are they again? Where are they again? Oh, they are on the side. There they are. Lord, in the name of Leonard Jackson, in the name of Shirley Malone, his precious mother and grandfather, he stands tall not just on the court, but he allows love to flow person to person. I'm gonna stop now. Yeah, I don't want to keep going. I can talk about Lindsay Leverett Higgins. There's so many of them. We got Curtis Smith here from historic St. James Missionary Baptist Church. Oh, it just keeps flowing, it keeps flowing, it keeps flowing. It keeps flowing.
So, for this discussion, myself and a couple other student leaders composed some questions, and we also sent out a submission form to the campus community, so that's where our questions will be coming from today.
Wonderful.
So let's get started.
Wonderful.
You were a young teenager during the height of the civil rights movement. And as a young man, you had these prolific leaders who marched and spoke out against the atrocities and struggles of Black people. Leaders like the ones you feature in your book, Black Prophetic Fire. What did King's message mean to you then? Let's fast forward to 2023 and discuss how his message has or hasn't been realized.
Well, you all reflected on these queries, didn't you? I'm telling you. Well, you see, for me, I was blessed to see Martin speak when I was 10 years old. I was on the chocolate side of Sacramento, California. That's where I grew up. And I didn't understand too much, but I knew that he was for real. I knew that he wasn't posing and posturing. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said. That's very important, because when you have integrity, honesty, decency, and then choose to be courageous, you become an exemplar in a greater tradition. Because, see, I came out of the West family. That's Irene and Cliff. I am who I am because somebody loved me, somebody cared for me, somebody tended to me. And then we tied to Shiloh Baptist Church, Reverend Willie P. Cook, straight out of Mississippi. Oh, yeah, gut bucket, Jim Crow, sophisticated, loving Mississippi. And it flowed through me. He baptized me right there in Shiloh. Reverend Cook and Deacon Hinton. And so when we went to see Martin, we didn't see just an individual who had this integrity, honesty, and decency. We saw him as a wave in an ocean. I can look at my father. I'll never be one half the man he was. Integrity, honesty, courage. I can look at my mother. She's AKA like you, but we won't go into that right now. Right on. Alpha 2. I look at my mother every day, every week, every month, every year. Integrity, honesty, decency. I'm not talking about purity. She wasn't pristine. She was human like anybody else. But to me, she was a saint. And a saint ain't nothing but a sinner who looks at the world through the lens of the heart. And for a Christian like myself, a saint ain't nothing but a redeemed sinner who looks at the world through the lens of the cross. But every saint got a past just like every sinner got a future. So I came out of a tradition in which Martin was situated and located. So when I looked at him, I saw Alberta King, his mama. I saw Daddy King, his father. I saw Christine. I saw A.D., his brother and sister. I saw Benjamin Mays, his teacher. I saw Chivers, his professor. I saw George Davis, Vanilla Brother, his teacher. George Davis wasn't some ally in the abstract. I know a lot of young folk like to talk about, you gonna be my ally? You gonna be my ally? Hey. Gil Evans wasn't Miles Davis's ally. He played the piano in the band. If you're in the band, you're not an ally. You're just a human being happen to have a different color who chooses integrity, honesty, decency, and want to be in solidarity. That's what we're talking about, you see? The great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, he wasn't an ally of Fannie Lou Hamer. He was a Jewish brother as a human being who chose to be in solidarity because he wanted integrity, honesty, decency before he died. And he had been shaped by his mama, his daddy, his synagogue, his Judaic tradition. This is a human thing, and we're getting away from that. That's why Martin's coming together and bringing us together is so very important, because Martin's spirit is here. Something is happening in Fayetteville in Northwest Arkansas. Oh, something is happening now. No doubt about it. But the challenge is going to be, will that something that's happening simply be economic expansion and opportunities, which is wonderful? That's for success. Martin was about moral and spiritual greatness, not just about financial success. Financial success is beautiful. Let the companies expand, treat your workers right. Let the various businesses expand, treat your workers right. But the fundamental question will be, what will be the quality of the relations of the brothers and sisters of all colors and genders and sexual orientations and religious or non-religious identities as they inhabit Northwest Arkansas? That's what Brother Martin would be looking at. That's what we're looking at. That's part of why we're here. And it's a beautiful thing to have the younger generation like you, Sister Haley. You from Little Rock.
Yes, I am.
Oh, Lord. You know, Pharoah Sanders just died. He was one of the greatest geniuses to ever come out of Little Rock. One of the greatest jazz musicians. Bearden, Arkansas, the great James Cone, one of the greatest theologians of the 20th century. He was my colleague. I actually reside in his office at Union Theological Seminary. I refuse to take off his sign. So he's still Dr. Cone and Brother West. That's on the door. But that's Bearden, Arkansas. And we haven't even got to Al Green yet from Forest City. C.D. Wright, one of the greatest poets of the last 50 years, Vanilla Sister from Ozark. You all know who I'm talking about. Arkansas, you have given the country and the world much. But the challenge is, how do you translate it on the ground for the least of these? Those in the hoods. White poor brothers and sisters from Marshall Island, on their in presence here. God bless them. Their babies are just as precious as anybody else's babies. And Martin, like my dear brother, I appreciate my brother reminding us. He said, oh, we don't want to sanitize and sterilize and deodorize Martin Luther King Jr. Because it's true, every January you go all across the country, and it's kind of Santa Clausification of Brother Martin. They turn him into Santa Claus, you know what I mean? He's just smiling, got a bag of toys, everybody loving him. And you say, no, when Martin died, 72% of white brothers and sisters were against him, 50% of black people were against Martin. And the younger generation say, how could that be? Everybody loved Martin Luther King. Yeah, when his body's in the grave, they love him. But oh, let him be in flesh. Let him speak with a power to unsettle people, bringing all poor people together. Critiques of Vietnam. How come? Because a Vietnamese baby has the same value as a white or black baby in Arkansas. He believed that. He learned that in Ebenezer Baptist Church. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black or white. They are precious. And it's like, that's not just a song. And that beautiful music that we heard here, that's not ornamental for our lives. It's not ornamental for black life or any human life. It is constitutive and integral. Music is fundamental in terms of providing a means by which we can see deeper, feel deeper, and become more courageous. Don't fall into that market mentality of being titillated and stimulated by the sounds. No, you want to be shaped and molded by the sounds. That's the challenge. No Martin without Mahalia Jackson. No Martin without Curtis Mayfield. No Martin without Nina Simone. You all know Curtis Mayfield and Nina Simone. Is that right? Younger generation. Oh, Nina. I know my sister from Spelman. I said, wave your hand, wave your hand. No, sister from Spelman in the house. You know what I'm talking about, too. But University of Arkansas, Fayetteville brothers and sisters of all colors know what I'm talking about, too. Sooner or later. Check it out on your internet tonight. Curtis Mayfield, Nina Simone, and throw in a little Bob Dylan if you have time. My Jewish brother from Minnesota, throw him in too. But those are the folk I was exposed to when I was young. For the young people these days, for you all, it's so much tougher. Oh, in so much stuff. You all got so much spiritual decay. Oh, it's just, Lord, the celebrities walking around. Look at me, I'm so sharp. My status. I could hear my grandmama saying peacock strut because they can't fly. I'm not impressed by how you strut. I'm impressed by the fruit that you bear. Somewhere I read, somewhere you shall know them by the fruit that they bear. Not the foliage that they have, the fruit that they bear. What kind of fruit? Love, justice, integrity, honesty, cut against the grain. Pay a cost. So you're not well adjusted to injustice. You're not well adapted to indifference. Rabbi Hesher used to say indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. You turn your back to the least of these. This beautiful state of Arkansas got 1 out of 5 of its children living in poverty and 39% of black children living in poverty with all the economic boom. I said, yeah, let it boom, but let it boom in such a way that it provides a way of satisfying the needs of the least of these. That's Martin. That's what got him in trouble. That's what got the brother killed. Because we don't like to talk about the death. We don't like to talk about how he was shot down like a dog. His life and his death go hand in hand so that we become part of his afterlife by the choices that we make, by the lives that we live, and it is not a function of skin pigmentation. Not at all. It's a matter of spiritual formation, moral cultivation, and courageous action. I grew up with a lot of black thugs and gangsters, because I was one of them. I got a lot of thug and gangster in me. A whole lot of thug and gangster in me. That's why I try to stay near the cross. Pray for me. Pray for me. I'm telling you. Good God Almighty. I hope the answer's not too long, though.
No, yeah.
It's all right.
that was
No, absolutely. No, indeed.
that was a great answer. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm glad, because I don't always make sense. I need prayer now. I do need prayer.
We're going to pray for you.
I appreciate you.
Okay, so we had a question submitted by a public policy PhD student specializing in social justice. They wonder, in your view, has the pandemic improved racial discourse in the United States?
Ooh, that lovely voice of the precious one. That was an answer right there. When you talk about race relations, we have to try to disaggregate that category. It's a little too abstract. And you see, the media, especially the corporate media, they don't specialize in piercing through deep truth-telling. They sensationalize, they keep it on the surface. You see, that's what I was telling my dear brother. So they deodorize it just to make it just palpable so you'll show up the next day. And that's true. It could be right-wing Fox News brothers and sisters, some of them now moving even into neo-fascism. It could be the milquetoast neoliberals and CNN and MSNBC. They're not going to tell the full truth, and they obsessed with each other because they're parasitic on each other in order to keep the cycle going and people still catching hell beneath the dialogue. You see, so when you talk about race relations in the abstract, well, what do we mean by that? That's why I spent a lot of time with the musicians. I was talking to Brother Carl about that, you see. And Martin did too, because Martin was an artist. You got to keep that in mind. You see, his language, his oratory, his rhetoric was artistic. Any great preacher, am I right, Brother Curtis? Any great preacher, Gardner Taylor, Carolyn Knight, Pray for Your Wind. They are artists, because what do artists do? Artists dig deep inside of their own souls and wrestle with the dark corners of their souls to transform their own suffering into a way of speaking or expressing themselves that not just touch the souls of others, earth and unsettle their minds, but it authorizes a different world. That's what the great Percy Shelley meant when he said, poets of the unacknowledged, legislators of the world. He wasn't talking about their kings and queens and monarchs. No, he's saying if you listen very closely to Marvin Jr., who was born in Harrow, Arkansas, who sang lead for the Mighty Dells out of Chicago, that voice authorizes a different world. You listen to the blues. B.B. King, nobody loves me but my mom, and she might be jiving too. What kind of different world is that? Through style and smile, that effort to wrestle with the suffering will not deny the suffering, but try to take us somewhere. So when you talk about the history of white supremacy in America, it's no accident that music has played a fundamental role. American country music is black and white. From Hank Williams on the one hand, to Johnny Cash on the other, to Son House and Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey coming out of Delta, Mississippi and other places. And the same is true in terms of all of those efforts to keep track of the relations. So race relations shouldn't be confined just to the social sciences. Social sciences are very important in terms of institutions and structures, but they fall short in terms of the messy side of how we connect and relate to each other. When I was picked up at the airport on Friday, I met a brother named Jim. He's a wonderful brother. He's about 72 years old. I'm almost 70. And he starts talking to me about the blues, and we just pull over and have a dialogue, because he's been playing the blues since he was 16. He's living way off in the boondocks. Because you all got boondocks in Arkansas, don't you? Way off in the boondocks. And we connected immediately. I didn't know what his politics was. He didn't know mine. But we connected because that music allows our humanity to overlap. So we have a starting point for then a discussion about our agreements or disagreements. So the pandemic made it difficult for us to connect. There's no doubt about that. But they were already so in such tough shape with the polarization. And not just the polarization, but the gangsterization. See, America has not only been polarized, but it's being gangsterized. And by gangster, what I mean is that hypocrites are not desirable, but to be a hypocrite still connects virtue to vice. You know what virtue is. You're just choosing vice. A gangster has no standards at all. Vice, virtue doesn't mean anything. Say anything, do anything, but impunity. No accountability. No answerability, no responsibility. Crush the weak, don't have to worry about it. No answerability, no accountability. You see, once that is unleashed in a nation, exactly. You slide down a slippery slope to chaos, and people begin to look for Pied Pipers to call for order. And they usually are Pied Pipers who are full of greed and hatred and manipulation and domination, and especially themselves, their egos. And they come in all colors. They come in all genders, even though they tend to be male, because the patriarchy is just so deep still. But we know the sisters got proclivities toward gangster activity as well. But the brothers, we got deeper problems in the patriarchal world, that we become more visible in our gangster activity. You see. Am I making sense to the younger generation? Because I come here to make sense. I want God to use me, you see. One of the great things about Martin Luther King Jr. was that, is it all right to get a little closer to you? That's good. One of the things that Martin Luther King Jr. was that he wanted to make sure that he was communicating at the spiritual, the psychic, the intellectual, the political, and the economic level. We don't have enough figures who are concerned about that. And so when we talk about how do we deal with vicious legacies of white supremacy, any form of hatred that loses sight of the humanity of anybody, black, white, red, yellow, Jewish, Arab, Muslim, Ethiopian, Guatemalan, Palestinian, Iranian, Iraqi. All of those human beings are made in the image and likeness of God, and therefore they all have a dignity and a sanctity. Now see, that's a major move. If you really believe that, then you decide to build on Martin's legacy, because anybody who really tries to love people are going to hate the fact that those people are treated unfairly. When Martin went to jail 31 times, and I'll never forget what Daddy King told me, with Andy Young as well, the three of us were there. He said, we were waiting for Martin. He had been in the paddy wagon, police wagon for 4.5 hours in the dark with a German shepherd. And they let him out, and he couldn't walk a straight line. It was just the three of us. The first thing Martin said, with tears coming down his eyes, this is the kind of brother we're talking about. He's not a God. He's not a deity. He's a human being, but he's making these kind of choices. He said, this is the cross we must bear for the freedom of our people. What goes into that kind of witness? He's not the only one. Ask Harriet Tubman, ask Frederick Douglass, ask Ida B. Wells Barnett, ask Malcolm X, ask Bob Moses, ask so many others, nameless ones. Ask J. Aaron Hawkins. There's a whole cloud of witnesses. Then on the vanilla side of town, ask Miles Horton. You all know Miles Horton, the founder of Highlander Center. That's where Rosa Parks was 3 months before she went back to Montgomery to sit down on a bus in order to stand up for justice. Vanilla Brother. We were singing with our young brothers and sisters, and Lindsay and my sister from Omaha in Mississippi. Where is she? Where is she? She was singing so beautiful. She was singing We Shall Overcome. Who wrote that song? Miles Horton's wife with a black woman. Black and white together. That's not allies. It's human beings who decide to be in the funk and the mess in order to authorize a better world in the name of not just justice, but love. Because any justice that's only justice soon degenerates into something less than justice. If you don't have love in your heart, then you're not going to be a long-distance runner in the justice movement. The justice movement would just be a careerist move for you. Lifestyle. It's just so nice being part of this social justice lifestyle. What you're sacrificing? Well, we haven't got to that too much. No, anybody who falls in love knows this is not a spectator sport. See my young brothers and sisters here, somebody fall in love, but I'm not a participant. I'm just going to observe. No, that's not love. You're looking for lust. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. Love is a form of death. You have to learn how to die. Something in you's got to die. Your narcissism and hedonism got to die at least momentarily for you to emerge as another human being entangled with another human being so that you are transformed and transfigured in your relationship. I saw it last night with Brother Carl and Sister Kay. 32 years. What is the last 2 years? 32 years of marriage. Give it up for the 32 years of marriage. 32 magnificent years of marriage. That's learning how to die over and over again. And it's no accident that the great Dorothy Day, our vanilla Catholic sister, one of the great giants of the 20th century, she wrote a eulogy for Martin Luther King Jr. on the front page of the Catholic Worker, April 5th, 1968. Martin Luther King Jr. learned how to die daily. Drop the mic. That's all she needed to say. And of course, it's an echo from our dear Jewish brother Paul, who was Saul, who wrote through the Thessalonian church. Christians must learn how to die daily. Am I right, Brother Curtis? Yeah, because every day, learn how to die daily. Goethe says the same thing in Faust for the secular folk, for the modern pagans. I love the modern pagans. They've got some magnificent figures. Goethe's one. Human beings must reconquer the worst of who they are every day in order to be free and be courageous and full of compassion. Similar insight. It's not from my Christian tradition. A whole lot of magnificent human beings who are not Christian. I don't exist without Malcolm X. He's a Muslim. I don't exist without Bell Hooks. She's Buddhist. I don't exist without Mahatma Gandhi. He's Hindu. I don't exist without James Baldwin. He's agnostic. What does that mean? It means we have to learn and listen to one another and be humble enough to learn from one another. Muhammad Ali, Muslim, freest black man in the 20th century. Richard Pryor, we don't know what that brother was. But oh, he was a free and loving man in his own way, wasn't he? So even we Christians, we stand for where we are, and because Jesus loving free people, but we listen to each and every person, no matter what color, gender, sexual orientation, or nation. But it's the standard of what my dear brother has on his paper. You see what he says? Unarmed truth and unconditional love. You see, that's a high standard. Unarmed truth. Conditional truth is to allow suffering to speak. And unconditional love, justice, is what love looks like in public. They're not identical, but they're inseparable. Justice in and of itself is not enough. You need mercy. You need love. You need patience. But if you have love and no concern about justice, it's sounding brass and tinkling cymbal. It's empty. It's vacuous. You see. And this is another thing, especially for the younger generation, overlooked in regard to Martin King. Martin was a soulful brother, like Bootsy Collins, like Aretha Franklin. What is it about all of those? Exactly. Soul is the sharing of a soothing sweetness against the backdrop of a grim catastrophe. So when you meet soulful folk, like when I met Brother Jordan, we marching together, laughing together. You see, I could feel the soothing sweetness flowing out of his soul. And I know if I went far enough, there's got to be some catastrophes in his life. Death of loved ones, betrayal of friends. He knows there's got to be catastrophe in my life. Not just the white supremacy, but also on the social and the social fronts. To be soulful is to be gentle and kind and sweet. And we're losing that. I got a chance to come up to Martin. Martin, you know, he was not real tall. He was spiritually tall, you know, but he couldn't play, you know, basketball these days. You know what I mean? Because about 5'5", 5'6". He was taller than Prince. Prince was only 5'2". Because he was my dear brother. I traveled the country, the world with Prince, and I miss him so much. But he wore these big old heels, so he looked like he's 5'5". But Martin's about 5'6". But the first thing you see about him and feel about him was this sweetness. That makes a difference. That's crucial. That goes hand in hand with the King legacy. It's not just about the ugly militarism and dropping drones on innocent people, though that's important. It's not just about the vicious legacy of white supremacy or male supremacy, or homophobia, or transphobia, or hatred of any human being made in the image of God. But it's also about sweetness and kindness and gentleness. And if you miss out on that, you're not embracing the full dimensions of Martin Luther King's legacy, which is the larger tradition that produced him. Because let's just be very honest about this, that it's hard to find in the last 400 years any people like black people who have been hated chronically for 400 years, and they keep dishing out love warriors every generation. Every generation. That's very important. That's very important. If black people had chose a black version of the Ku Klux Klan, January 6th would look like a tea party. Because there'd been civil strife or civil war every generation. When Frederick Douglass emerged as leader, he could have said, you all terrorize us, we're going to terrorize you back. He said, no, I'm going to fight against terrorism across the board. I want freedom for everybody, no matter what color. That's what moral and spiritual greatness is. That's not interest group politics. That's moral and spiritual greatness. He could have said, you lynch one more brother. You lynch Roosevelt, and we're going to declare war on you. And I'm a major leader, and I have influence all around black America. No, here comes Harriet Tubman with her Bible saying, we are going to fight, but we're going to fight on a higher moral and spiritual ground. We're not going to get in the gutter with the gangsters, even if we got gangster elements in us. I had that challenge in Charlottesville. When I went to Charlottesville dealing with some of my sick white brothers, the neo-Nazis and the Klan. You all remember Charlottesville 2017? We had 8 of us out there. We singing This Little Light of Mine. We about to get crushed like cockroaches. But one of the brothers walks up to me with this big old, got his gun and his ammunition and his big old mask and everything. He said, I know you that brother that call everybody brother on television. I can't stand that S-H-I-T. I said, oh, brother. I said, I'm a free black man. I don't ask for anybody's permission as to who I love.
I know that's right.
Nobody's permission to who I love. And I went on a little evangelical witness, and I told him, Jesus loves you just like Jesus loves me. I said, you choose to be a gangster. And I was a gangster before I met Jesus, and now I'm a redeemed sinner with gangster proclivities. So we're on a human spectrum. These are the choices that you make. I'm trying to make other choices. University of Arkansas Razorbacks. What choices are you making? As human beings, don't get caught in your color. Don't get caught in your gender. What kind of human being are you going to choose to be before the worms get your body and somebody gets your soul? That's the human question. That's Martin Luther King Jr.'s question. And he only lived to be 39. That's not a long time. That's not a long time. But I know you got another question.
Hey, okay, going on. So speaking of change and making a difference, how would you address those who may be resistant to change?
Well, it depends on what the reason why you're resistant. If you're resistant because you're scared, then you need more love, because love breaks the back of fear. That's what love does. Martin used to say over and over again, I'd rather be dead than afraid. Think about that. All of us are afraid. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's working through fear. Aristotle is right. Courage is not rashness. Courage is a species of wisdom. So the question becomes, are you a coward? If so, say so. That would be one of my questions to Brother Trump if I got a chance to get close to him, you know. Because all this, you know, the mess and damage he's done. But my first question to Brother Trump would be, are you a coward? What you scared of? Because in order to love, you have to have courage. Cowards can't love. In order to fight for justice, you have to have courage. And if you're a coward and a gangster, then I was right by calling you a gangster on television. The evidence now is overwhelming. Not out of hate. I believe in Christian hatred, where you hate the sin and still love the sinner. You hate the domination and still keep track of the humanity who dominates. But you got to fight because they are foes. There are lines in the sand. There were lines in the sand in Charlottesville. The fascinating thing about Charlottesville was when I walked by the park, they listened to Stevie Wonder. I So you got the Klan and the Nazis listening to one of the greatest love warriors of his generation, and yet they want to kill the people who produced Stevie Wonder. That's very American, isn't it? It really is. It's very, because the black music is so rich that it affects your humanity even when you hate the folk who produce it. The sound is just so good. Then I met David Duke, who's Catholic, where the Klan was founded out of hatred for black people, Jews, and Catholics. Now they got a Catholic who's Grand Wizard. Nathan Forrest, the same city that Al Green was born in, founder of the Klan right here in Arkansas. Now they got a Catholic. I say, ooh, that's upward mobility American style. Yeah. Wow. Next thing you know, you're going to have some black folk in the Klan, confused. I'm telling you, you'd be surprised. We got some black folks supporting neo-fascism today. Human beings are human beings. We got some twisted minds out there. There's no doubt about that. And the challenge with Martin and Martin building on Jesus is, how do you stay in contact with their humanity and even love the image of God in them as they choose to be gangsters? But see, that's the challenge. That's a tough one. That's spiritual discipline. And everyone will not be convinced. You know, Brother Malcolm say, no, that's too much for me. I'm not loving these white folks. No, that's too much, Martin. No, you take that Jesus and go. And I love Malcolm. Malcolm was just wrong, but that's all right. He loved black people. That's very important. That's very important, because a lot of times you get white brothers and sisters who are crazy about Martin, thinking that somehow they were center stage. Martin is so wonderful because he loved me and loved white folk. Yes, he did. But he didn't go to jail 31 times for you. He went to jail for an unloved people, black people. So don't get that twisted. You don't have to be center stage and pick your heroes based on just where you are. You start where all of us need to be, centering integrity, honesty, decency, vision, courage across the board. And so there's an overlap between even Martin and Malcolm. Malcolm just wrong in his early years about white brothers and sisters being devils. That's not true. Do many white brothers and sisters engage in devilish activity? Yes. The brown folk, the black folk, the host of others? Yes, but when it comes to slavery, Jim Crow, Jane Crow, racism, you got power relations. There's benefits for white skin privilege. That's what Malcolm's trying to keep track of. That's why we listen to Malcolm. We don't have to agree to everything, but we see the overlap. That's what is crucial, and that has to do with the humanity of everybody. Any group catching hell. You got the hatred of so many different folk these days, gay brothers and sisters, and trans, and the way Jews are hated in Russia and so forth, and Palestinians hated in the West Bank, and Dalit people hated in India. And look what's going on in Iraq right now. You all keeping track of what's going on in Iraq? Crimes against humanity, crushing young Iraqian brothers and sisters. Martin says we need to have an overarching moral and spiritual vision that embraces all of these various attempts to resist the hatred and the greed. And that's why he always began with Matthew 25, the least of these, the poor and the working classes. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, well, I think we're just down to like a couple more questions. So I know we touched on young people a little bit.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to the young brothers and sisters, because you got so much going on. I mean, your generation is quite magnificent in so many ways. It's just that you got so much coming at you. Oh, my God. You live in the most commodified, market-driven culture in the history of the world, and you are told life is about being successful rather than being morally and spiritually great. I get young folk coming to me all the time. Brother West, I'm working on my brand. What's your brand? I say, I ain't got no dang brand. I got a cause. I don't have a brand. See, exactly. The freedom struggle is not a brand. The kingdom of God is not a brand. The love of my mama and my daddy and my grandparents and my children and my wife, that's not a brand. That's a cause. That's something I'm willing to live and die for. You don't live and die for your brand. That's your career. I want to know what your calling is. That's your profession. I want to know what your vocation is. That's what you do in order to survive. I want to know what your mission is in life. That's where Martin is working. When Martin died, didn't have money to pay life insurance for his family. Thank God for Harry Belafonte. When he won the Nobel Prize, every penny went to the movement. And Coretta Scott, and Coretta was such a towering freedom fighter in her own life, said, Martin, I think you're going too far, though, brother. Honey, you know, we got kids. And I wouldn't have done that because I believe family is first. So somebody give me $100,000, I'm going to have to work this out with my wife and kids. Then we're going to get to the movement and say, okay, what's left is this. But I'm real old school in that way. Martin set a standard so high I can't achieve it. And we got to be honest about the standards we know we can't achieve. You know what I mean? Exactly. If you think you sound like Luther and you don't, somebody need to tell you that. You pick up a saxophone and say, I'm John Coltrane. No, you're not. What's your name? Jamal. You Jamal, man. Keep the standards where they belong. Martin set a standard of giving and giving and giving and emptying himself so high that most of us know we can't meet it. But for young folk these days, if all you're told is to be a brand, if all you're told is to have a career, if all you're told is get a dynamite job and live in some vanilla suburb and try to live large in such a way that you'll be able to live a life of comfort and convenience, nothing wrong with that if you recognize there's something greater than that. Using your success for service to others. Using your success for something beyond your ego and your own narrow self. And young folk are bombarded with the market messages and signs and realities. And then given this grotesque wealth inequality, it makes it so very difficult for people to feel as if they can even survive. And so I have great respect for young folk because I dealt with Jim Crow, which was ugly and vicious, but we had some non-market values that kicked in so beautifully over and over again. That's why the Martin Kings and others became such towering figures. Because non-market values are what? Love, integrity, honesty, decency, treating people right, having children. You don't have children for market reasons. Parenting is the ultimate non-market activity in a market-driven culture. But with those precious kids, you're going to get joys you know not of. But if the culture tells you that life is a joyless quest for insatiable pleasures, you can get any pleasure you want and still be joyless, empty of soul, then you don't have what it takes to even be a freedom fighter. You don't have the spiritual stuff to sustain your struggle from one generation to the next. And so I salute the younger generation for building on Martin's legacy and Rabbi Heschel's legacy and Ella Baker's legacy, Fannie Lou Hamer's legacy. We can go on and on, Miles Horton's legacy, and so on.
We're going to do that. We're going to build
Oh, y'all already doing it. You all are already doing it. No, it's true.
Okay, so last question. What's next for Dr. Cornel West?
Ooh, well, my philosophy is each day is a blessing and each breath is a breakthrough. So if not looking way down the road, I don't know what the Lord has for me. But I can tell you this, that I'm going to go down swinging. Swinging. like Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington and Muhammad Ali, Karl Malone and LeBron and all the other folk who give it all. And Duke used to say it don't mean a thing, but it ain't got that swing. And what's in the swing? Love, courage, integrity, freedom to be yourself, memory of those who loved you enough so that you could soar like an eagle and not just be a peacock. That's what's in store for all of us if we so choose. And we're in it together in terms of we need one another. We all have called for help. And one of the ways we respond to that call for help is what? Helping others as we accept the help. So we need to cultivate receptivity, learn how to receive as well as give. And so in that sense, I'm going to have a good time on my way to the grave and thereafter. Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. But of course, you know, I got a joy that the world didn't give me, the joy can't take away. So, I mean, that's a whole different lecture in terms of Jesus. The same Jesus that Martin was tied to. The same Jesus and that same cross that surprised by joy on that Easter after that long Saturday when it looked as if God was dead. Weak, feeble. Here comes Easter Sunday. Power in that love. Power in that struggle for justice and freedom. And most importantly, a power in allowing the beloved community to never be erased or eliminated, no matter how small it is. As long as there's a cloud of witnesses tied to the kind of love Martin was talking about, then we can run on in the end. We can run on and see what the end gonna be. Indeed. Let me ask you one question. Yes, indeed, indeed. Indeed, no, because you've done such a wonderful job. But how do you connect to Martin's legacy, you say, in your own sense of calling?
That's a good question. Well, just for one, always being kind to others, always sticking up for those who feel like they are voiceless or don't have a voice.
That's right.
Serving my community, being an advocate. I am half black and half white, so there have been times where I feel like I've been in between, but I know that my voice will be heard and that my presence will be known. So
beautiful. Give it up for Sister Haley Tucker.
thank you for coming out today and speaking with me. I think we're about to wrap up and get with our closing remarks. So thank you so much, Dr. Cornel West. This was truly an opportunity.
Thank you all so much. Thank you so much. University of Arkansas, Fayetteville. Razorbacks in the house. Razorbacks in the house. Tied to the legacy of Martin King, Rabbi Heschel, Dorothy Day. So many others. Thank you so much. God bless you all. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. West and Haley, for that very insightful discussion. Thank you, Dr. West, for coming to Fayetteville. Now we would like to welcome the Inspirational Chorale back to the stage. The mission of the Inspirational Chorale is to keep Black sacred music tradition alive. The ensemble provides a forum where university students, regardless of ethnicity, can perform various genres of the tradition.
thank you all for joining us for the 2023 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Vigil.
Now, we would like to introduce Lindsay Leverett Higgins, Northwest Arkansas MLK Council President, Taylor Gathings, Second Vice President of Black Student Association, and Tyler Moraine, Vice President of Associated Student Government, for some closing remarks.
Good afternoon. I am Lindsay Leverett Higgins, and I had the distinct pleasure of serving as the president of the Northwest Arkansas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Council. A special thank you to Chancellor Robinson, to the ASG, to the Black Students Association, to Mary Skinner, and the University of Arkansas. Dr. King was a visionary, a brilliant orator, a courageous activist, and a principal proponent of nonviolence. And it's still difficult for me to wrap my mind around the fact that a man that planted the seeds of freedom and justice and equality was only with us for 39 short years. He graduated from college at 19, earned a doctoral degree, became a minister, and in 13 years from 1955 to 1968, he would go on to change our country and our world forever as we know it. And while he's been gone from us for nearly 55 years, this day, this holiday, helps remind us that he's not really gone. He's still with us. His legacy, the ripples of his humanity, the echoes of his words, the reverberations of his actions, they still continue with us today. And we need those echoes and ripples and reverberations and that legacy as much today as ever before. We need the still spreading ripples from his unwavering commitment to love and nonviolence. We need the still sounding echoes of so many inspiring words like, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. We need the still ringing reverberations of his brave confrontations with power and oppression in marching for voters' rights in Selma, for housing in Chicago, and for sanitation workers in Memphis. As long as disparities still exist between our African American, Latino, and white brothers and sisters in the areas of education and poverty and opportunity, we must still continue to nurture and tend to the seeds that Dr. King planted. As we recommit and reflect on the legacy of Dr. King today, I challenge you to embody his ideals, to be an advocate, a loving disruptor, helping our community to overcome our history and move towards the beloved community that Dr. King dreamed of. Again, thank you to the organizations and the individuals that brought us together, that worked so hard and tirelessly to amplify those ripples and echoes and reverberations, and to realize the life and legacy of Dr. King. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Taylor Gathings, and I'm the second vice president of the Black Students Association. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said at his march for integrating schools to make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. I believe that wonderful events like this and the daily work that each of you all are doing is living proof that we are all closer to building onto that finer world that Dr. King dreamed of. Thank you so much, Dr. West, for teaching us about integrity, honesty, decency, and courage today. It gave me chills hearing you speak. Chancellor Robinson, wherever you are, congratulations. Thank you so much for your support. And then thank you all again for joining us today and for continuing the full-time job of humanity through learning of our past and using these lessons to model a better future.
Again, thank you all for attending the 2023 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Vigil. We hope our time spent remembering Dr. King's life and legacy has inspired each of us to learn, reflect, and grow. It really has been an honor and a pleasure to help plan this event and work with our incredible speakers and performers. First, I would just like to show appreciation for each of those people. I know we've kind of already done that, but first for Chancellor Robinson and Dr. West for sharing your wisdom and spending your time here with us today. Second, for the Inspirational Chorale and their ability to bring people together through music. Y'all are incredible. And third, for our rock star Masters of Ceremonies, Haley Tucker and Elisa Williams. And finally, for the Northwest Arkansas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Council, who have been instrumental in the development of this vigil year after year. As you celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day, please remember it's a day to reflect on progress made and still in the making. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Thank you all for coming out today. As you're leaving, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech will be playing. Have a great day.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summit of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."